Broadcasting live. I'm Karen Burka, your webinar producer. Thank you for joining us today for Accelerated Mobile Pages. Is Faster Better? We are very pleased to welcome Adam Young, President and Founder at Event Ticket Center, Aleyda Solis, International SEO Consultant at Orainti, and John Shehata, Vice President of SEO at Conde Nast. Our moderators today are Michelle Robbins, Senior Vice President of Content and Editor-in-Chief, and Ginny Marvin, Associate Editor, both with Third Door Media. Before I turn the webinar over to our moderators, I want to tell you all a couple of things. If you need some help or have a question for our speakers, just use the Ask a Question box and we will do our best to help you. You can also see more complete bios and contact information for our speakers on the left side of your audience console. If you want to tell a friend, check out our sponsor, SMX Conferences or Digital Marketing Depot. There are some widgets at the bottom of your screen. Just click on them and they will take you where you want to go. The hashtag for today is DMDWC. Now we are going to hear a lot of great content, so I wanted to let you know we are recording this broadcast and we will make it available for viewing on demand this afternoon. I'll send an email when it's ready. Remember, if you have questions for our AMP experts, please make good use of that Ask a Question box. I'll get to as many of those questions live after the formal presentation. So with that, I will turn the webinar over to Ginny Marvin to get us started. Ginny, there you go.
Great, thanks so much, Karen. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited about this hour ahead. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to talk very briefly and just wanted to talk first a little bit about how, when AMP first came out, it was focused on news publishers, but AMP has really evolved over the last 6 months or so. And so with including e-commerce, CPG, and travel companies, and this is happening globally. And companies are willing to invest resources in development for AMP and troubleshooting because of the promise of better mobile outcomes. So in May, Google announced a beta that it's been running to test driving mobile search ad traffic to AMP landing pages versus just regular mobile landing pages on the advertiser site. And the goal being to see if AMP landing pages will drive better engagement on mobile than those regular landing pages. And Johnson & Johnson was the launch partners in this beta and reported a 20% lift in engagement rates on AMP landing pages. And you can see in the screenshot here an example of the AMP landing page has loaded essentially immediately after the users clicked on the ad, whereas that regular landing page is still slowly loading. And so there is recently, I think just yesterday, Google also posted another post about several other e-commerce companies that have also seen other good results from switching over to AMP. And so a couple of things I just wanted to touch on before turning it over to Adam, some of the benefits and caveats with AMP landing pages. So there is support for conversion tracking and remarketing. There's been some really big improvements in the way that analytics handles users that visit both AMP and non-AMP pages so that they aren't double counted anymore. And that's really recent as of earlier this week that has happened for pages on the Google cache. Another thing, so AMP does have native support for A/B testing, but if you're using a third party for landing page testing like Optimizely or Unbounce, you won't be able to run those tests on AMP pages, at least at this point. If you look at the AMP documentation on GitHub or on the AMP blog, you'll see that there is a lot of ongoing work to support more features and components. There are still limitations that you need to be aware of, and I know our speakers will go into more of these in detail, but things like customizations based on location aren't supported. But generally speaking, there's a lot more features supported, like dynamic content and features that are being developed specifically to support e-commerce retailers. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Adam Young, President and Founder of Event Ticket Center, to talk more in depth about AMP specifically for e-commerce and what he's seen from their AMP implementations. So Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm going to skip over all this fun stuff about me. I don't think anybody cares that much. Get right to the meat of it. So the gist of this webinar is really about is faster better, but I think it started out as AMP necessary to achieve that speed. I think that's what a lot of the questions are around. Should they, you can get fast without having AMP. So hopefully I can answer some of the reasons why you would want to go to AMP, or at least help you with that decision process. But basically what this topic is about page speed, or at least the title of it. So in reality, you don't have to have all three of these versions in order to have AMP responsive, and hosted, and eventually when those hosted pages get into the Google CDN. But that's really
All right, we seem to have lost Adam's audio for a minute, folks. So if you bear with us, we're going to try and get him back as soon as we can. We seem to be having some audio difficulties a little bit today. So just want to remind everyone to stay with us. We've got quite a few panelists coming your way to talk about different aspects of AMP, including for e-commerce, for digital publishers, and also for designing your site in terms of responsive and mobile web pages and all of that. So we'll have Adam back in a minute. Remember, if you have some questions on the topic, you can go ahead and submit them. We're going to try and get to as many of them as we can after the formal remarks.
Adam's back. Can you hear me?
Okay, there you go, Adam. Thank you. Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe it's with all our bad weather in various parts of the country. We may be having some issues, but take it away.
Yeah, I'm in Florida. I apologize, everybody. Everything's overloaded down here, so I really apologize. Anyway, page speed, that's the gist of the topic. Yes, you can have a fast, responsive page. AMP is certainly faster. You can approach the speed, and then the CDN, the goal is to get under 1 second load times, okay? So I think any engineer on here is like, I can make a fast page no matter what, so why do we need AMP? That's a valid argument, but there are very valid reasons why AMP is important, at least to Google and to some of the other large platforms and players out there. The first is that the code is verifiable and reliable. So Google, for instance, can once it's verified, they can rely that it is what it is. Another important factor to Google is the security holes that come along with JavaScript and some of the other coding techniques. And again, Google does not want that. So it's not just a page speed issue. I really believe that AMP is going to become a prerequisite for a lot of, whether it's in the SERPs, whether it's in AdWords, whether it's in featured snippets, and other platforms will do the same. One, because it's verifiably fast, it's verifiable code, and it doesn't have the security holes that come with other languages or coding techniques. Barry Schwartz wrote an article, I think it was 2 days ago, about the featured snippets in AMP. Kept saying it's not a ranking factor. I don't disagree, but I think it will become a prerequisite for various featured snippets and widgets and other features. And if your page is AMP and it is verifiable and it's secure and it's super fast, why would Google serve up a page that is not? So if it's not a ranking factor, a direct ranking factor today, think of it as a prerequisite potentially in the near future. Next page. All right, so we took the approach. We've been working on this for about 1.5 years now, and we took the approach that the landing page, our customers do not convert on the landing page, so that doesn't get us all the way there. That's just a starting point. We've developed a fully immersed AMP site, meaning as you come into our site and our hosted version, you will stay in the AMP experience as you navigate around various categories, home pages, product pages, and whatnot, until you get into some deeper funnel areas such as our interactive maps and checkout, and we are actively working on those as well. And I'll come back to the potential importance of that. But again, it's like, why just have this crazy fast landing page? Why not make your whole site lightning fast? Our responsive site was already really excellent. I mean, great user experience. We're a little bit above a second load time at this point. On our hosted version of our AMP, slower with the responsive, and then super fast in the CDN under the second. We have found that I know there were some questions out there about like what types of pages and what do you do with them. We have found that AMP works awesome for simple pages, and as you get into very complex product pages that need a lot of user interaction and choices, we are having trouble overcoming that. Now, some of our pages are extremely complex. Think of a Cubs game, and there's probably 200 different sections to choose from at Wrigley Field of varying sizes and shapes. That type of page is we found to be very, very difficult, where the user needs a lot of choices and a lot of interactivity. Then on simpler setups like a general admission venue or a small theater or an amphitheater, the interactive map is not that relevant because there's just not very many sections, right? So we can get a super fast AMP version of that page going. I'm just speaking quickly. I know there's other speakers, and I'd hate to take all the time. But we're also working on Google Payment API, and that's basically at least step one to moving towards making
All right. I think that Adam's audio has cut out again. Unfortunately, as he mentioned, he is calling in from Florida, where they're going to be pounded by Hurricane Irma. So I think what we'll do is to jump ahead a little bit. If we have time, we'll be able to come back to the discussion with Adam. I'm going to bring in Michelle Robbins, one of our moderators, our second moderator for today. Michelle, do you want to maybe come in and introduce Aleyda, and we'll move on with the latest slides and get back to Adam?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead with that. Okay, so to talk about the technical challenges of implementing AMP, we've got international SEO consultants, Aleyda Solis. Aleyda focuses on helping businesses connect with their customers via organic search. Some of Aleyda's clients include Zillow, Kiplinger, and Under Armour Sportswear. Thank you so much for joining us, Aleyda.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here today sharing with you. So as you mentioned, many of my clients are big brands, right? Highly trafficked websites. And a few of them are already using AMP. Not all of them are into the media industry, right? But we can see here already data that many of big brands have already incorporated in some ways, and definitely for their informational sections, AMP. The truth, and it's the big question of today's webinar, if it can be faster. It can certainly be faster if you have platform restrictions to implement WPO, Web Performance Optimization best practices, of course. And that is the thing. A lot of these huge companies, huge web platforms, the bigger websites, they have usually technical debt. They have legacy systems that for which it is very restrictive and very challenging to optimize all of the resources that are required to really make them fast, right? So somehow AMP provides a way to work around this issue by implementing, enabling this parallel presence. And the truth is, if we can take a look at some of the data, speed data of the actual mobile page versus the AMP version here of a few big sites, we can definitely see an improvement, of course. So how much faster the mobile web pages will become? It depends on the site mobile web speed optimization status at the moment. So for me, it is very important that this is taken into consideration in order to have the right expectations out of AMP. There's a trade-off. Despite all of these very straightforward, higher visibility that we can obtain with the carousels, that for which the AMP implementation is a very straightforward decision for a big media company or a blog, right? For other type of companies where they're already performing well, there is a little bit of a backlash with an inconsistent mobile user experience. I am a little bit sick myself, actually, to see more and more all of this AMP, Google URLs with AMP being shared even in social media, right? So this inconsistent type of navigation that we'll end up having, and the fact that these are the URLs that are shown in the mobile SERPs, not the actual canonical original URL of the site. That for which right now, yes, we can switch if we want, but it's an alternative, as we can see on the screen, that is not necessarily obvious for the user. And I have found also that many website owners, of course, are not very happy to not have that traffic themselves. There's also this a little bit of necessity at the end of the day of having the technical resources and flexibility in order to really implement all of the navigation system, to really replicate the UI that we have with our mobile web presence at the moment on the AMP version. As we can see here, sometimes even big blocks, like in this case, right, Best of Tech, it's not necessarily that straightforward. There's no navigation here on the AMP version. So of course you will see a higher bounce rate. You don't provide a way for the user to continue navigating on the site. So it's very important that now there are indeed many more components, functionalities that are provided and supported by AMP. We make the most out of them. So it's also to be aware that this is a continuous implementation. I had a client that is a huge forum in Latin America that they told me, when I asked them, why you don't have like a proper navigation with your AMP pages? And they were like, because when we launched our AMP pages, we still couldn't implement them. There was not a component for them. So it's very important that we prioritize. Well, on one hand, we stay very much in touch and updated of what it is supported or not by AMP components on one hand, and on the other hand, that we monitor, we validate well the implementation. As I'm showing on screen, this is a real website, big website that launched AMP. So of course there were thousands of errors at the beginning, and I had to prioritize to fix those that were really critical. The critical ones are the ones that are not going to make the pages to actually be shown, and mobile SERPs as AMP supported, like SEO crawlers nowadays, like deep crawl, Bodify, big SEO crawlers. And even we can configure already the validation of AMP pages with smaller ones like Screaming Frog. They will allow us to really verify and fix and prioritize those pages with more traffic or key pages to really implement and fix those critical errors that have been flagged already, and that we can easily verify also in a test environment with extension like Lighthouse, for example, or Google Chrome Dev tools to make sure that they really comply to the best practices and principles. And then again, I have found more and more sites like the Reddit, for example, as I am showing on screen right now, that of course they want to make the most out of AMP traffic. They want to be included in carousels. They want to have like this faster experience to the user, but whenever it is possible, they refer those users from their AMP pages to their actual pages, mobile pages. As you can see here, with the button to read more, they will refer actually to those users to their actual pages, right? And one of the reasons is because of this. There is a caveat, as it was mentioned before, right? That until now, until yesterday, actually, Google Analytics didn't support it and didn't duplicate it, the users that will come through the AMP cache. So this might not necessarily be completely accurate. Now we are going to see the actual data from now on Google Analytics, and on the engagement, on the bounce rate, or on the actual users that are coming from these pages, and their behavior versus the organic mobile non-AMP pages, right? However, from the data that I have seen, like the one that I'm showing on screen, it's pretty, it has been pretty consistent that our original canonical pages that are not AMP usually still have better engagement. Again, there's another caveat, less known one, but has been already identified in the Google Search Console. The data that is provided here, even if you eliminate the AMP pages, somehow, if you select AMP non-reach results, there's still data there. So there's something that is, and the pages that are shown that are included in that report are not actually AMP. So I will recommend that all of you, to make it a little bit more actionable, download the data, filter the data yourself, segment the data yourself to really analyze eliminating this additional data that might be because of a bug. So yes. Big transactional players are already jumping a little bit on it. We have like this big example from eBay pages, but again, and I'm going to go back a little bit. The speed improvement from time to first byte, for example, some critical metrics here, they don't necessarily change much. So it's important to have this assessment and analyze internally what will be achieving, all the pros and cons. We need to, I will say that I will to take AMP with a little bit of grain of salt, independent on the type of characteristics, resources that we have, and the actual profits that we'll be able to take from it. The father of responsive web design, as I am showing on screen, he wrote a great blog post analyzing AMP a few days ago. And AMP, he said, it has good intentions to fix the issues of mobile page speed. However, it should be seen really as a workaround, and it has implications that sacrifice the open web, because at the end of the day, there is already a standard for this. There is an HTML standard, and with AMP, what we end up doing is to duplicating our already existing pages with another standard that, yes, is based on HTML, but it's a little bit different, and it's not necessarily that open yet. So when to implement AMP? Well, if you don't have a mobile version that is independent, for example, because I have clients that have a NEM subdomain mobile web version plus an AMP URL structure plus the original canonical desktop versions right now. So it's a really big mess. I wouldn't recommend to do that if we have that type of setting. If you're in the media, though, and news industry, it's very straightforward because, of course, you want to be included in the carousel visibility, and Google has made AMP a requirement. If your current mobile page speed sucks, of course, if you have restrictions to implement WPO best practices, you may want to give and try to fix it with AMP for sure. You can also personalize AMP to have a similar UX functionality than your current mobile website. This is critical to validate first, to assess first, and for this it's important to see what is already supported by the components. Again, components are expanding all the time. Now there are many more features regarding e-commerce, which are amazing. I have to say, I was very impressed when I saw, especially with AMP Bint, that provides all this interactivity. But of course, it's important to validate it well, to see if it aligns well with our resources, with our characteristics, with our goals, and to take it always with a grain of salt and really know all the do's and don'ts, right? And I'm going to be actually talking a lot more about it in my session at SMXist. So thank you very much for your time to allow me to talk a little bit about it, and I'm ready for Michelle's questions.
Thank you for those insights, Aleyda. We had a couple of questions from our webinar attendees that I'd like to ask you now. First one, is it better to have a clean mobile responsive version with plenty of structured data, or an AMP version of the site?
Well, this is the one thing. At the end of the day, AMP is still not our original canonical version, right? So our mobile responsive version is actually the one that right now is the canonical one. So the one that should be implementing a structured data is our original canonical mobile version, the one with responsive web version in any case, right? So because especially with a mobile first index, that is the one that Google will take into consideration. AMP, if it is not a canonical original page that you are indexing and using all the time consistently, it's not going to solve this issue. So it's important that even if we implement AMP, we somehow still have a responsive support and a mobile original canonical version that includes the content, includes structured data that we can use on a mobile first index. Because from what I have also spoken and see, Google is still trying to sort out mobile first, and still until now, most of the usage of AMP is as a non-canonical version. So AMP is not going to fix that. We need to still have a good mobile version, I believe.
Okay, so how are you measuring whether AMP is helping boost traffic or if AMP is simply cannibalizing traffic you would already have had?
So this is a great question, actually, because of course, it has been tricky until now because of this, the duplication of users challenge going on, right? Between of what it arrived to the own Google CDN, AMP CDN there, and those are arrived to our actual AMP pages, right? So what I have done until now is to, and until now the best practice that Google recommended was to set AMP as its own original, unique, independent property in Google Analytics. So I set a profile for it, and I had still my raw traffic, segmented traffic on one profile. Then I had the AMP one. Then I had the another one for all mobile, organic, non-AMP, to make sure that I had different data sources and that I could compare the overall with the different segmentations to see if they added up. Also, when I was launching, in the times when I have been launching the AMP pages, to track well how the different profiles traffic decrease and increase accordingly, to see if the overall add of this data were the same as before, or if there was really an increase. And I have to say that I have seen, of course, an increase, especially because of the impact on the carousel of the sites where I have been able to implement it, where that have like a more informational type of focus, and then even on other ones that were more leads oriented, I do have seen a little bit of a difference of the impact on click-through rate on the pages where non-rich results with AMP than those that are typical mobile web results.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip the next question because I think you already answered that, honestly, with what you said in your first question. Thanks so much, Aleyda. I'm going to pass this back to Ginny and Adam so we can pick up where we left off with Adam's presentation. Over to you, Ginny.
Great.
This
Thanks.
is Adam.
Welcome back, Adam. Hi, Adam.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Adam, you want to pick up? Yes, I can. Do you want to just pick up where you left off, the AMP for AdWords?
Sure. I'm going to try to get through this, but a lot of the things that the last speaker was speaking to have been resolved with this fix with analytics, Google Analytics. We've been beta testing and working directly with the product managers for over a month now, ironing some of these things out. Some of the engagement issues that she talked about that weren't on par were related to different user sessions. You know, leaving the CDN was a bounce, even though you're going to the second click on the hosted version of the site. So most of those things have been overcome. I'm going to jump into some technical things, just as far as background and whatnot. I mean, we kind of all see what's coming down the pipe. Anyway, we've been running 100% of our mobile traffic and AdWords through our hosted AMP pages since early in the year. We did have a 20% lift. We've been doing a lot of other neat stuff along those lines, but I'm going to skip through that. AMP for AdWords, I'll go ahead and touch on that. That is a new beta that's out that we're actively working on. We are pushing our AdWords mobile traffic through the CDN at this point, and working with Google product managers and ironing out all these things. Pretty neat, pretty sexy, but it really came down to analytics working properly. So they have been spending a lot of time on it, and we have been spending a lot of time working with them and on some of these upgrades and fixes to Google Analytics. The first of which is what Ginny wrote an article about a few days ago. You know, she said it's an easy implementation, this, that, and the other thing. There's two other key things that I think you all need to take notes on. You need to look at Ginny's implementation article that she provided was pretty good, but you also need to be looking at it. Should you exclude the ampproject.org referrals? What that does not do is eliminate the traffic. All that's doing is not overriding where the traffic came from. For instance, Google CPC or Google Organic, even though it came in through the CDN, that was the source of it, right? So by eliminating the override, by excluding ampproject.org, I'm not telling you all to go do this. I'm telling you to look at it, because otherwise you're going to see all this referral coming from the CDN. Who cares? You know, I push it in through Google CPC, for instance, right? The other thing is that, and I'm going to touch more about some of the complexities and understanding the data, but another important thing, until even with the release that Ginny's talking about that we've been working with for the last month, you still cannot just tell the difference between your hosted version of the page and the CDN version of the page in analytics. I spoke with the product managers this morning to get some clarity on that. They sent me the fix for it, and we will be implementing it as soon as tonight. So that is a segue into what is, you know, it's kind of a paradigm shift looking at your analytics a little bit. Some things that you really, really need to understand once you get it set up correctly. And the data's, well, I have a high degree of confidence that the AdWords data within the AdWords platform is very solid at this point. And at a high level, I have a very high degree of confidence that this new analytics upgrade for AMP is capturing all your traffic, okay? I have a very high degree of confidence of that. However, there are some things that are important to understand. You are using an AMP container for your analytics versus your regular container because, you know, there's just, I'm sorry if I'm saying, it may not be analytics, it might be tag manager. I think it's a Google Analytics container that's different than your normal analytics container. So if you look at data source, if you segment your GA data by data source, you can see what's going through your AMP pages versus your web pages, okay? That does not mean that, but it's not segmented between what's going through your hosted AMP page and the CDN, okay? That's what this new fix that they sent me today in, and I'm sure everybody will get information on that very soon on that to add that step as well. Well, what further complicates it is, if, say you look at like landing page and you want to look at landing pages of data source for AMP, you can see as they switch from AMP data source to web data source, you can see the whole, transaction all the way down to the transaction. It keeps that user together. However, once you start segmenting your data, there's still a lot of deficiencies. This is early on with analytics. There's still a lot of deficiencies once you start doing some of your segmentations, because they are really coming from two different data sources that are being tied together based on a click ID. So once you start looking at breakdowns, like for instance, you might look at your transactions for your landing pages with a data source of AMP, right? They are going to show as a web data source once you do that with 0 sessions and the transaction. You have to just understand, but if you were to just look at the landing page itself, not segmented by data source, then it has a clear picture of your sessions and your transactions. These are just some paradigm shifts that it's not necessarily broken. When you're looking at your analytics data, you're going to need to take a step back and say, okay, what is this really telling me? And for the time being, they just got the users tied together from these two different data sources pretty nicely. But as far as being able to then do some deeper dives into your data across these data sources, you just got to understand it's not totally there yet, but it is actively being worked on. And you can still get very good information. Just don't think you're getting false negatives and false positives. Just take a step back and say, okay, how can I look at this differently? Or maybe I can't look at it this granularly. Very, very important, I think. It's just a real paradigm shift. I'm very confident, though. We've been running this AdWords where we're pushing our mobile traffic through the CDN for a month now. It's not even like a published beta, I don't believe. There's very few doing it. And the data really seems to tie together really nicely. Once I have the ability to see what's going through the CDN versus my hosted, that's where we're really going to be able to see where the real lifts are coming from. Although I can't really give you headlines right now because it wouldn't be meaningful data. It wouldn't be meaningful information. Let's see. All right. So the future, I can conclude this with this last point. The future, what is the future of AMP? I honestly believe it's going to be a prerequisite for serving up, whether it's in featured snippets or the search results or, side platforms or side products or whatever it might be. Again, it's verifiable, it's super fast, and it's verified super fast, and it's secure, all of which are very, very important for, rapid ingestion and deployment of content, or serving of content. The other thing is that I'm supposed to get an ETA. This is on the roadmap with Google and AMP. Right now, they're concentrating on getting these things ironed out for landing pages. Again, I don't think that landing pages get you all the way there because people don't tend to transact on landing pages unless it's lead gen or something. But we are building a fully immersed AMP experience, and it is on the roadmap once Google gets the landing page and the analytic issues related around AMP landing pages ironed out. That if say you're in the CDN, if you navigate to another page that is also in the CDN, it will keep you within the CDN like lightning fast. That's pretty awesome and pretty sexy. That's where we're really going to make some big, big strides. What is the ETA on that? I don't know. It is on the roadmap. I was supposed to get an ETA on it. I would say it's not anytime soon. They got a lot to iron out with the current, just landing pages alone. But I do have a lot of the things that the last speaker spoke about have been resolved both on the analytics side, largely, as long as you understand some of the segmentations and different data source issues, and some of her user interface issues that she spoke to, like the navigation, the icons, the hamburgers and navigation and whatnot. All that. I'm not saying everything. It's a work in process. A lot of that stuff's been ironed out. It's just a matter of implementing the component and doing it correctly. None of this is rocket science. The AMP bind stuff is really awesome and sexy for product pages. it's server side. It's pretty, but it's so fast because it's basically taking your cached version of the page, serving up a default version of it. AMP bind then changes some variables, sends it back to the server, and it returns that a different version of that cached page based on the variables that you send back, the parameters that you send back using AMP bind. Really quite awesome. It's kind of like an AJAX scenario, but it's all done server side. Kind of like requesting another page, but it's already all staged up. It's like parsing out your I could talk about this on and on and on. I think that now that this is AdWords, when they're pushing AdWords, that's how they're going to start monetizing AMP. And if you don't start thinking about moving forward on it, your competitors are, and if it works in AdWords and you're left behind, and you rely on AdWords, you might have a problem. That's it. Thank you, Jenna.
Great. Thanks, Adam. We did have dozens of questions that came in ahead of time, and I know you've spoken to a lot of these. I guess looking at the first question and some of the ones I've seen coming in through the live system, I want to ask you one question, and that is where to start. So if you're just getting, if you want to move towards AMP, but you're not sure your pages are appropriate, if it's going to, for a typical e-commerce site, what were like the top two things you would say, okay, this is your checklist to even see, to get started with AMP?
Well, don't be afraid of it. It's stripped down simple code. If you're already building regular sites, this is easy. You just gotta pull back and keep it simple, stupid. The KISS motto, and it will. It's not scary. It's not that complicated. I would just start doing it. And what you do is take a page. Take your simplest page. We started with that. You take your simplest page and you create an AMP version of it. That doesn't mean that you have to release it to the CDN. It's a parallel hosted version of whatever page that is or page type that is, and just do it, and then tweak it out a little bit and get it close to what your regular experience is, and it might even be better because it's simpler and users don't really care about all those bells and whistles in most cases. They want speed and they want simplicity, especially on a phone. They want big fat letters. So I would take your simplest page or page type, put your engineer on it, put your technical savvy person on it, put your junior person on it, and the coding is easy. The coding is relatively easy. You're just serving the page up a little, using simple HTML is what you're doing. Just do it. Do it on your simplest page and just put someone on it. And then you just start, putting your hand in the toilet and pulling it out and unclogging it and just figuring out where your holes are, both in user experience and in being able to be verified or validated on the AMP project side, on the CDN side. But I wouldn't start even worrying about the CDN. Just build it on your hosted side. You have to have that anyway. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, great. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Adam. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Michelle Robbins. Michelle, take it away.
Hey, this is Adam. Let me just chime in. I just want to give a shout out to John, the next speaker. He's instrumental for us. He's been on the speaking circuit with SMX for at least a couple of years, and he was really instrumental with us. And we're like, shoot, why can't we do what he's talking about on an e-commerce site? So I just want to give him a big shout out.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ginny and Adam. That was really informative. So next up to discuss AMP and site engagement, we have John Shehata. He's the Vice President of SEO for publisher Conde Nast. You're no doubt familiar with one or more of Conde Nast publications. And John, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And guys, this is my first webinar, so forgive me if my technical abilities with webinars is not that great. So I manage SEO for a lot of brands, and the reason for that slide is some of the brands I work on are very news-oriented, while others are non-newsy at all. So I got the experience for both worlds, right? Because there's a big argument out there that this is only good for news sites, or it's not so beneficial for non-news sites, and so on. So I'm going to share some stats with you along the way, but one of the things to consider is AMP now is almost on 56% of all news results are AMP. This is from I think range, if I remember correctly. So AMP is inflating the results more and more. You will see AMP results, I think a couple of days ago or today. Search Engine Land had an article that AMP is officially a part of the featured snippets. You will see AMP in social. You will see AMP like LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter has been pushing it, converting all URLs on mobile to AMP since I think June. You will see that in apps. Google News apps, for example. You also see it in Bing. You will see it in Google image search. AMP is getting there all over the place. So Google, I believe this is a big push for Google, and they're going to stay behind it. This is not like another authorship kind of scenario. Now, you will hear that AMP is not a ranking factor, and it's true, right? But the thing is, I think Adam and Aleyda hinted to that. Even though it's not an actual ranking factor, I would say it's indirect and a prerequisite ranking factor, right? When I say indirect, when I say prerequisite, right, you will never show in a carousel, right, especially if it's an AMP carousel or top stories, or now we see more like AMP recipes, carousels. You will not show up there if you don't have an AMP page, right? So this is like a pass-fail kind of scenario, right? Yeah, it's not a ranking factor, but it's a prerequisite to rank in the first place. Another thing also is you can argue if user behavior on search is a part of the ranking algorithm, but slowly users will be trained to click the AMP pages because they are way faster than regular pages. And when we see more clicks on these pages, I believe that will influence the ranking. So it's not a ranking factor, but I will say indirectly it will influence where you rank. This is an overall view. So I have at my disposal about maybe 20 million queries across all the different sites, and we save like every day all the queries that come through the site. So you can tell very easily that AMP top stories, which is the carousel and mobile, is around 3. It doesn't have to be position 1. Usually it comes in position 1, 2, or 3. So sometimes you will have 2 non-AMP links on top of the AMP carousel. AMP blue links was in the blue link SERPs. Usually it's about, average position for us is about 8, while in general our average position is 10 for these million of queries. Okay, so I want to answer the question is it important for non-newsy sites versus like newsy sites, right? So I would definitely say it's important for almost all kinds of sites, right? So the blue mark here versus orange. Orange is the top stories clicks, the top stories, which is the news carousel clicks, versus the blue links on the SERPs. And you'll notice that the ones I pointed with orange arrows, these are very newsy sites, right? And so you see the orange clicks almost like half, 25% of all AMP clicks. While if you look at the non-newsy sites, you will see, like, which makes sense, the blue SERP links of AMP are actually most of the clicks. So I would say even for the newsy sites, the blue links send more traffic. The blue AMP links send more traffic than the top carousel. And because of like Google algorithm and query deserve freshness, a lot of times you see the top stories and the top carousel will jump into, after a while, into the SERPs. So that plays a factor there as well. Okay, so just to tell you how big AMP is for a publisher like ours, 82% of all mobile search traffic is coming from AMP. And I think somewhere in search engine land, there was someone mentioned it's almost 100% for their site. For us, it's 82% because there are few pages that we decided not to put on AMP. So we decided that the most important pages are what we call detail pages. So it's an individual article, individual slideshow, individual recipe, individual product review, and so on. We decided not to have the individual product page, right? We decided not to have any of our index pages, which is like /entertainment, right? Which is host a river of links to all the recent and popular articles on entertainment. We decided not to have any of these type of landing pages or aggregate pages on AMP. We will reconsider this in the future, and that's why I think that this 18% of mobile traffic is going to these kind of like river or aggregate pages. Okay, so Michelle asked a question, does AMP really help traffic or not? And we have been looking at this question for a while, actually. So I work with our data scientists and analysts, and we looked at the traffic for the past 2 years, right? So way before AMP started, and we built a model to project where would our mobile traffic will be right now if we didn't use AMP. And they used sophisticated methods beyond my head, right above my head, where we used index, we compared to desktop to see the spikes and so on. So it was very comprehensive, very complicated. And the blue line you see here is the projected mobile traffic if we didn't use AMP. The orange line on the other hand is actually our AMP traffic. And if we filter the noise and some of the analytics issues that we had and so on, I can say with 99% certainty that AMP almost doubled our traffic, mobile traffic, search traffic, almost doubled our mobile search traffic. So it's definitely worked for us, regardless if it's mobile or not. Finally, I just want to mention a few things that are not on my slides here. There are a couple of plugins that out there that can make your life easier, like WordPress and Yoast. Now, these are suitable and good for medium to small sites. The bigger the site gets and the more complicated, I personally think that you should have some advanced developer in your team. AMP is very important, especially in the future. You're going to hear more and more about progressive web apps. If you don't have AMP, if you don't have HTTPS secure sites, you cannot do that. This is coming, and it's coming soon. iOS 11 strips out AMP when you share it. So this is one of the main concerns for publishers is people were sharing the CDN Google URL. iOS 11 is solving a part of that. Oh, something very important. There is a new error that starts popping up in Google Search Console. It's called AMP content mismatch, where the content on your mobile page or the canonicalized page doesn't match the content that is on your AMP page. It's considered to be a critical issue, and pay attention to this because I see some people out there who will have an abbreviated AMP version of the actual page. I think Google is catching up to that, and that's why a part of that is giving this error. If there are missing media, they will also give that error. That's it for me. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks so much, John. Your results have been really impressive, and you did address a number of these questions that we've gotten. So I think I'm just going to ask you one, if you could talk a little bit about, and again, you're a news publisher, so I'm not sure how many of your publications have conversion metrics associated with activity on the site. But one of the questions, actually this has been a lot of the questions, has been the impact on conversions. So if some of your properties are subscription-based or they have newsletter signups, things like that, what are you seeing with respect to conversion on the AMP pages?
It really comes back down to the design, right? So many publishers, when they first launched AMP, they started with the simplest design out there, and then they took SAP at it, right, to enhance ad viewability, to enhance ad clicks, to enhance all kinds of conversions. And the top two conversions for us, as you mentioned, is subscription and newsletters. In the beginning, it wasn't working well for us because we were one of the launch partners. So we launched with the simplest AMP design ever. As we go along, we continue to enhance the design elements, and we see improvement. Also, there is certain high ad units that we cannot use, certain elements of the actual pages that we cannot use in AMP due to limitations. So we slowly improving that. I also want to answer the other question that you have here very quickly. Is it recommended to link from one AMP page to another AMP page? I recommend not to do that. Don't change any of your links currently. I also asked Google engineers about the same thing, and they said don't do it. So till things change in the future, I recommend just keep your internal links as is. Don't change them. Don't link from one AMP to another till there's more clarity on Google end.
Okay, thanks. So back to the conversion question, would you say that the drop in the conversion rate has been fixed by the advancements in the features offered in AMP, or have they been improved by A/B testing and things you guys have done on the site itself?
I would say mainly by the A/B testing on our site and the change of design elements, and slowly Google is trying to work with publishers and many other sites on enhancing AMP, and they're very responsive. So they are listening, and they keep changing, and they keep adding. So this is absolutely adding as well to the enhancement of the performance.
So overall, would you say the trade-off was worth it, the boost in traffic for the slightly less CTR for a period of time?
If you ask me, I would say it's worth it. If you speak to different units within any brand, it would tell you it's different. Designers hate it. Sales, they're not sure about it. Engineers, most of them actually love it. Digital directors on the fence. So it's really different. It depends on who you speak to.
Right, okay. It's interesting that you talk about that, and that actually blends into what I'm going to discuss next. Really briefly, I'm going to talk about some survey results that we've gathered. We released an AMP survey, and if you haven't taken it and you're on the webinar, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and give us that data, to go ahead and take that survey. So the URL is up there on the slide. We're going to be collecting data for about another month and then discussing the final results at our session of SMX East on this topic. But we have had 470 responses so far. And what's been interesting to see is that the overall lack of adoption. So of our respondents, only 39% have adopted the framework. And development resources were cited as the primary challenge in adoption, which was interesting because most respondents also reported that development time was just 1 week. 75% had the 1 week to 1 month window. So when you look at the challenges, it's interesting that the development resources, as well as tying the initiative to revenue, management support and buy-in, kind of some of the things that you talked about, John, with respect to how people feel the initiative has worked throughout the organization. Also, here are the results that have been observed by the people that responded to our survey. Some of them square pretty well with what the people on the panel here have talked about today, but not everyone has seen, I think, probably the increase they're wanting to see, so hopefully those things will change. Now, for the 61% that have not implemented AMP at all, the reasons for not doing so was spread pretty evenly throughout these options here. I want to pass it over really quickly to Ginny and Adam. We have a couple of results for PPC landing pages that they're going to have to run through as well.
This is Adam. I didn't know these were my results here. Listen, I just want a real quick follow-up, though, on something John said about the linking from AMP page to AMP page. I think it really depends on your strategy. In theory, it doesn't matter because you are canonically back to your, responsive mobile page. But I think John is heavily into SEO, and on my side of the business, we drive most of our traffic through ads. We like the experience of fully immersed, AMP to AMP, because it's just lightning fast. It's almost a distraction. It's so fast to the user. Then on these PPC landing, I didn't know I was going to comment on these. Yeah, I find these as very interesting.
Adam, Ginny was going to comment on those. Adam, I was just passing it back to you today. You wanted to follow up.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, no, and thanks for that clarity, Adam. I do think, as John was saying, it depends on who you ask in some cases in terms of what the strategy is. But I think, what's interesting here in the results for the PPC landing pages is just 10% of respondents have implemented AMP landing pages. And I guess that's actually not that surprising. The beta is still early, and of course you could, like Adam's team did, just start running AMP pages now. But I do expect that adoption rate will increase significantly over the next year or so. And reason why is you can see, so of those people that have implemented them, 31% say conversions are higher. 43%, again, still too soon to tell. I think we're going to see that for some time to come. But I think this is still very early stages on this front, and it'll be interesting to see the data that comes in over the next month or so, and if that affects these results. I'll turn that back to you, Michelle.
I think we're finished now. Karen, did you want to give any closing remarks to the audience, or?
Yes, I will go ahead and jump in. Thank you, Michelle and Ginny and Adam and Aleyda and John. We went through an awful lot of content very quickly in the hour that we had. So unfortunately, this is all the time we have today. But I want to thank all of our speakers and moderators for a very informative and timely presentation. And just a note for all of you in the audience who submitted questions, I know we got through some of them with our pre-prepared questions. We were not able to get to some of the live questions, but we will be addressing them in our editorial content on our sister site, Search Engine Land. So you can look for the answers there, and you can join us at SMX East from October 24th through 26th to see our panelists in person. So just visit marketinglandevents.com for more information. That's all for our broadcast today. We look forward to seeing you next time right here at Digital Marketing Depot.